morning. I'd like to call to order the Monday, 23 December meeting of the Guilford Selectboard. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. I'd like to recognize our distinguished guests, the public. Would you like to introduce yourselves and please sign in?
I'm Wendy Stone from the Guilford Recreation Commission.
Eric Jones from the Guilford Rec Commission.
Wanda Tomlin, trustee, fire department.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, and the rules of procedure which govern how the public and the select board interact with each other are on the table here. So we don't need to go through them at this point. Are there any additions to the agenda?
I do not have any.
I do.
Okay.
If we can get to it, I'd like to add a very quick discussion about points that the select board members might want to have in the select board report that goes into the town meeting warrant that I'll be writing.
You mean the town report? The
town report, yeah. So if we have a chance to get it, otherwise I will poll you in some other way, but we may have time to do that tonight. Just if you have any remarks that you might think are relevant to put in that report.
And I want to read my poem for Guilford elders at the end.
Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda order as it's written?
I have none.
Thank you. Can I have a motion, if there is one, to approve the minutes of the December 9th Select Board meeting?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
Sure.
Is there any discussion?
There was a minute correction and Peter corrected it.
Oh, excellent. All those in favor of the...
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved then. Thank you very much. The highway update.
I spoke with Dan this afternoon. He has a previous engagement tonight. As I think everyone knows, they have been plowing and salting and sanding and repairing equipment and hauling gravel. Other than that, that's been taking up plenty of their time.
Great, thank you. On to new business. We have an update from our Sterling Planning Commission. Would you like to come down,
Well,
Sterling?
since they're the Recreation Commission.
Oh, they're the Recreation. Where's the Planning Commission?
They're not here.
We'll have to, would you come, let's have the Recreation Commission then in its
Ta-da!
place.
Hello.
Good
Good evening.
Form I can pass out.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
If there's any extra, I'll take it.
Oh, sure.
Oh, here, my poem I can
Yeah,
share.
here we go.
Thank you.
Here.
There's plenty.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
We're all set.
Great, thank you. Okay, so as you all have in front of you, I've written out a report for tonight, which is also the report that we've submitted for the town report. The Guilford Recreation Commission is a 7-member volunteer board who work under the advisement of the Guilford Select Board and with our Select Board advisor, Verandah Porche. Thank you, Verandah. Our mission statement has recently been revised, and I'll read it here. The Guilford Recreation Commission fosters community connections and well-being for our town by supporting our public spaces and by collaborating with other community organizations to offer engaging, inclusive recreational activities designed to meet the needs of our neighbors. In the past year, we're proud to have provided a variety of services to the Guilford community, which includes the following. The events that we promoted were the Winterfest at the fairgrounds, which occurred on March 3rd. Bike night occurred at the Guilford Central School on May 4th. The Guilford Community Picnic was held at the Playscape on July 27th. And Trunk or Treat and Dance Party was held at the Guilford Central School on October 26th. Recreational opportunities include the open gym / playgroup for families and children ages 5 and under. This free program was co-sponsored by CC4G. The winter playgroup was offered every Saturday inside the Guilford Central School gym And during the spring and summer, the playgroup was offered every Saturday at alternating locations throughout Guilford. We also offered a free day pass for people to Fort Dummer State Park to all Guilford residents. We fostered Nordic skiing for Guilford students, and I've included a description below, which I'll read in a moment. We provided a location for families and community members to gather and recreate at the Guilford Center Village Natural Playscape, which I'll also discuss in a moment. And finally, we sponsored a free yoga class during one of the Brook Community Center Community Days. The projects that we have worked on include the Bill Koch Nordic Ski Project. During the 2018-19 winter season, the Recreation Commission issued 25 Nordic ski packages to Guilford children for the season and provided 4 days of free Nordic ski lessons. This year, the program has more than doubled to include the provision of 52 ski packages to the Guilford Central School students and the homeschooling students. We will be offering free Nordic ski lessons again this winter. A $1,500 grant was received from Rise Vermont to supplement the available funding from the recreation and 2 private donations. However, the cost of the ski packages exceeds our funding by $572.40, and fundraising efforts are underway. The other project that we've been working on includes the Guilford Center Village Natural Playscape upgrades. Several work parties were held to promote the park's accessibility and usability and to meet the town's insurance requirements. A split rail fence was added to promote safety with the embankment beside the Broad Brooks access. 2 grants were secured for the enhancement of the playscape. A $1,500 grant from Rise Vermont includes the installation of a hand-powered water pump, 4 raised beds, some soil, plant starts for the raised beds, and a compost bin. Also, a $4,630 dollar-for-dollar match was received from the state of Vermont, their Building and Communities grant, which includes the following projects: the excavation of the parking lot, a handicap accessible trail around the perimeter of the property, also a kiosk and welcome station, and signage for the park. Fundraising efforts are underway to raise the needed funds for this project. And the 2 grant projects for the playscape plan to be implemented in the spring of 2020.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay?
And thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a splendid
for-
report. You guys are really doing it. How many, I'm just in terms of numbers, how many day passes?
I don't have those numbers. I did send an email to inquire about the actual usage, and I hadn't yet received a response. My thought is that it probably wasn't widely utilized, and we're trying to problem solve for next year ways to encourage the usage of that.
How does it get used? Does somebody just identify themselves as a Guilford resident?
So our plan was that people would come to the town office and they would show proof of residency, and then they'd get a free day pass, which they could keep for the season, and then they'd present it upon arrival and have free admittance.
I will say, we did give out an awful lot of them.
Oh, you did?
Whether or not folks actually use them, I can't speak to that. You have to find out from the folks at the state. But we gave out an awful lot of them.
That's
great.
awesome.
I think almost
That's
all of the
what I
ones that
was
you
hoping to hear.
there's a few left, but I think almost all of them were given away.
Oh, good news.
And my other question was, do you have an approximate number of how many participants were in the play groups?
Certainly the winter playgroup is very well attended. I'd probably say 20.
20, 25, 30,
Fam-
some days 10,
families.
you know, it depends, but, you
But
know,
it's pretty-
20 on average.
Pretty brisk.
Yeah, it's a great group of young families that, you know, looking for social activities for the youngsters, and it's been a great program. The winter program transitioned to a summer program, and that wasn't as well attended as the winter, but the winter one's very successful.
Great.
Is that back this winter?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, it starts up next month.
Well, you deserve a great deal of praise for your volunteer work and what you've accomplished in a very short time in terms of the rec commission really throttling up.
Thank you.
Don't we have one question about the $500 in the?
Oh, yes.
2 questions for them.
Yes.
About your budget proposal.
Yes.
You guys were actually being, not you specifically, but the rec commission was
Yeah,
being spoken about tonight regarding your budget proposal.
Okay.
And the first thing that came up was under your equipment, the $3,200, one for the storage shed and the equipment canopy. The discussion that the select board was having about that is that could, because you work for, technically, all the work you do is under the select board, that could really be viewed as a town asset.
Okay.
Because it will be owned, however, regardless of how long you two or the other members of the rec commission are part of the rec commission, it's still going to move forward, and you'll get new people who come in, and we'll still need to have that shed for storing all the
Yeah,
equipment that you guys have
absolutely.
so successfully gotten together.
Right.
So the select board feels that because that's a town asset, that the funds for that could really come out of the capital plan.
Oh.
And so you don't have to, which is already set aside every year. So you guys actually don't need to ask for more money. You just would need to come to a select board meeting and ask them if they would fund that project for you.
Which we said we would.
Informally, yes.
Right.
Okay.
So that's one thing. So
Great.
at the moment, they've actually removed that from your budget proposal.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So,
Yeah, to back up just a little bit, we had voted on having a shed here on the property.
which is actually going to be the second part of that.
Yeah.
Is due to this work going on, the potential work going on in the library, and also the fact that the playscape is not the most secure location because
Right.
there's not a lot of people in that area. And we have plenty of space here.
Yeah.
They informally agreed that should you purchase a shed, that there's plenty of space for you to put it at the town office.
Right, and that's what we had hoped to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's perfect. We just
I
appreciate
don't know if we have
that.
to vote on that at
No,
some point.
not, I mean, you will in the future. Or
No,
They
not
come with
tonight,
a
no,
request.
but-
Oh, I mean, only the funding request. You don't have
Yeah.
to vote on putting the shed here.
Right.
That just, if they approve your request, we'll put the shed up here.
Great.
The other question that they had is we're just looking for a little bit further explanation on 2 budget points. One was what the funding for the Bill Koch Trail will go for, as well as the funding for playscape maintenance, considering all the work that has going on for that already.
Sure.
The Bill Koch Trails is really just for the purchasing of ski equipment and
We'd really like to expand to include ski packages for people of all ages. Currently, what we've been providing is just for the school-aged children. So we'd like to purchase some ski packages for adults, and so that would be housed at the library, so they could go and rent the skis for whatever period of time is determined, and they could loan the skis and return them when they were through.
if it's building on the program of the libraries already has with the snowshoe.
Yeah, so a tiny bit of clarification would just be to call it the Bill Koch Ski Project or Nordic Ski Project instead of the Trails Coast.
Yeah,
Sure.
the name isn't great, and that's really just a carryover from before.
Right.
But we purchased, 27 sets of skis for, I think it was around $3,700, and which is a very good deal, and so
And
this.
then town, members of the town who want to use those skis don't have to pay for them then.
Right, they would be free
Yeah.
to use. They would sign them out at the library and use them.
But the library also has a gift of a bunch of skis as well, or are those the skis that you purchased, the ones at the library now, or the?
Those are for the students, and we had a distribution evening, and only 25 families came out of 52. So the librarians were kind enough to accept the packages there, and people can come and pick up their skis at the library. And I could speak to the playscape maintenance. We feel like it would be nice to have a bench or two on the property so people could sit down and enjoy the park. Because we were thinking that it would be nice to get a consultant as a landscape architect to sort of just give a sort of a overall vision of the playscape, so that as we add new developments, that it would all be cohesive and part of a overall plan. We'd like to get a wheelbarrow for the playscape so that people, when they're gardening, they'll have the ability to move soil and compost. Also a shovel or two and some rakes and a watering can.
Where would those be kept?
Well, that could be built into the
Yeah, I had this design of a compost bin with an area to hang the shovels and the rakes off of that, essentially.
I'm sorry, would that be lockable? I mean, you
No,
know.
I mean, we didn't envision locking it, so if that's something to consider.
Well, I'm just thinking about, I mean, it would be wonderful to have those tools there, but it might not be a secure place without something that could lock.
Right, that's a good point.
We, not to play Debbie Downer here, but we also need to take into consideration the town's insurance and having folks do gardening over there as well. There might be some implications related to that.
Don't people garden at Guilford School?
I can't speak to whether or not folks garden over at the
No,
school.
people, I can say
We've got
that
different
people
insurance
do.
requirements than they have as well,
Yeah,
so.
the insurance is different, but they do garden there. They have a garden club and all that at
I
the school.
think there might be some folks in the audience that can comment.
To the public gardening at the school.
Beth, do you know whether there was an insurance issue with having the public gardening there?
I've never heard the insurance brought up. It's a great question that I'm not sure has been considered, but there is kind of open gardening parties, if you will, at the school where
Which is
everybody's invited.
wonderful.
Yeah, it has good turnout.
I mean, gardening has been part of the playscape all along. It has raspberry bushes and filbert trees and things that do need some mulch put around them and weeding. And the people, the parents, when they're there with their kids, they take care of those things to pass the time, and the children are able to participate in that. So the point is to get families gardening together, well, if they can.
Sure, I appreciate the idea behind it,
Yeah.
but
We
the
should
town's
get
insurance
clear-
company may not necessarily be as friendly towards that, which you guys have experienced based on
Yeah, absolutely.
previous things,
So we should just
unfortunately.
clarify that.
We should. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they won't be accepting of it,
Right.
but I just think based off our previous experience over the past year and a half in trying to move the work that you folks are trying to do to move forward in the playscape, I think we should just at least inquire about it just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, yeah.
A question about this, the landscape architect,
Mhm.
do you have any, is there any details about that? That sounds like a kind of a broad, adventurous project to do that might have more to do with the town than just the Recreation Commission. What are your thoughts about this architect?
The idea was raised by Laura Lawson-Tucker, has a friend that she knows who's a landscape architect, and she suggested that we might consider calling them and getting an estimate or an idea.
I think it's when we go to sort of try to, it's a community project, so when we're trying to bring all the ideas in from different people, we want to sort of respect those, but also sort of have a plan so that we're doing it in an appropriate way for public space. So you know, I think we were just trying to look for general guidance as far as, you know, how the park should be organized. With the gardening, so for example, where you wouldn't want to stick that in a place where it's going to get a lot of shade, for example, or, you know, how to utilize the space best, you know, seemed like a worthwhile investment, but that it's just an idea at this point, so.
But it's an idea that equates to a budget, a line item in the budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So also, I mean, just in terms of benches, that might be able to be covered by the same capital
I was wondering about that.
I was thinking of that too,
budget.
yeah.
You know, so we can look in a more category-wise, you know, just to see what could come out of the sort of equipment budget and in terms of a landscape architect, it would be great to know, or landscape designer, whatever the person is, it would be good to know what that person might charge for an overview.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes,
Really exciting.
good report.
Should we try to should we try to get some numbers that would be?
I would appreciate that. I think that when you do a budget like this and you have community projects and you're mentioning the projects by name, that you might have a footnote and to let not only the select board, but the town residents who are going to be paying for this, what it is that they're paying for
Right.
in that project. I think that that's vital, and it serves the interest of the rec commission.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But I
So in
think
other
that-
words, if you were going to get a landscape architect, you might find out the average charge and say 2 hours at $150 or something like that. Yeah.
We can get
But-
those numbers.
The rec commission is really well regarded. I mean, people trust you and they'll be happy to hear from you.
Oh, we're not challenging you.
No, I wasn't. I
Oh, and
was
it
just
sounded
trying
like a
to.
footnote that,
No, Richard, I was just saying that we appreciate what they've done.
we do.
One quick question for you.
Yeah.
When is your January meeting? I don't remember, I'm sorry.
The second Wednesday of every month at 6:30.
So it'll be on the 8th. Okay. So the only reason I'm inquiring is just because the select board is going to approve the final budget on the 13th at their select board meeting.
Okay.
And so,
We'll have to vote on the 8th. And
yeah, otherwise
changes.
they'll just make changes to it if you guys don't come back to them.
Okay. Yeah.
Just wanted to let you guys know that. Thankfully, January this year falls in such a way that your meeting will occur before theirs this time.
Great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, and
Thanks,
at the, since we don't have the planning commission here, we might as well move right on to the fire department budget proposal, which each of us has a copy of.
I don't yet.
Where's the fire department?
It was
Oh,
in that-
it was in the.
I didn't print them
file.
out for you, they were in the file.
I
Oh,
printed it
okay,
out.
I can go to the file.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks. Hey guys, welcome.
Thank you. Are you wanting us to give a little overview, or do you have specific questions? Would you like
I think
to-
an overview would be
An
good,
overview.
yes.
Perfect. So if you recall, the last several years, we have not asked for any increase in the fire department budget. We've been able to be level funded. This year, for a couple items that we will highlight, we are looking at a 3.6% increase. It's about $8,300 more from the town appropriation than we asked for last year. Two real primary drivers of that increase. We've added a $12,000 line item to building maintenance this year that was not in last year's budget. The building was built in 2007. And there's a list of some maintenance items that need to be taken care of in the upcoming year. So that's what the $12,000.
Not 2009, because we had a 10-year bond and we're just going to make the final payment on it.
Was it 7? Or was it? I think we started in 7, it was done at 8, and I think you took it over after we already were going a year, so I don't know, that's all.
Because we just made the final payment in October.
Perfect.
Of a 10-year bond,
Yeah.
and there you go. So somewhere between 2007 and 2009.
That's not I was just curious.
Approximately, no,
I don't
good
know.
question.
I'm where
So
we
that,
are yet.
I don't see the building maintenance line in
Okay,
the
so
budget.
It's not, it's not in that.
It's
Unless-
nothing,
or is
I
that
mean,
the
it's the
printout
overall
from that?
budget, it's the overall budget.
No, it's not in there, because I knew.
What line is it on?
He's looking at the printout that you sent, or sorry, the Excel sheet that you
Yeah.
sent to me.
so what that's the, so it would, right here, building, 37?
37. Oh, you know what? My printer cut it off at 35. That's
Oh,
why.
no.
Look here,
Yeah, there it is.
$12,000
Yeah,
for
I
building.
got it, okay.
And so a $12,000 increase alone would be more than a 3.8 or 3.7% increase. So we were able to offset that additional line item by reducing our capital outlay fund. So our capital outlay fund is what we've been calling our truck fund for the past several years. As you've probably heard, we purchased a new truck this year. So
Yeah.
we thought that we probably didn't need to put as much into our truck fund this year as we have been, since we hopefully won't need to buy a new truck for a while. So we reduced that capital outlay fund line item to offset that additional $12,000. There are some other minor increases and adjustments. I'm happy to go through them line by line. We've upped our legal and accounting fee a bit. Since I took over, I've been enlisting the help of one of the CPA firms in Brattleboro, which costs some money, but it's been a really important, and we performed an audit this past year and everything's going great, so it's money well spent. And telephone went up a little bit, office supplies, so like onesie-twosie type things. If you have specific questions, we're happy to discuss them.
We don't see on this, we don't
Yeah,
see
you
a
don't see that.
a reference to a previous year or anything, so, that's all
Okay,
right.
I brought what I had sent you that compared,
Yeah, that's what we'd like to see.
we can make some copies maybe? So I had sent this to you when you asked.
Yeah, and I thought that's what I shared with the select board.
Oh, maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing.
I just have, unless I haven't accessed it, because I just have,
It's the budget versus actuals that we're talking about. And I just saw the budget there.
yeah, I just have the 2021 budget here.
Oh, is
Unless
that
it
what you
was
sent me
I sent you most
on
recently.
Friday?
Yes.
So the town office is closed on Friday, so I
Okay,
only shared with them what you had initially sent.
Well,
okay,
let's-
which was the
let's
summary
just start
budget.
Which was
Yeah,
a summary
let's do
budget.
it.
Can we make copies of it, or?
I think it will take too much time for the
Okay.
time being,
I'm
but I
happy
can
to-
share that with
Or you
them.
might take a peek.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, we might be able to speak to it without looking at it, so if you have questions, go for it.
so that's the difference.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's
I can work on Friday and you not on Friday.
correct.
So this is, okay.
That's income.
And you'll see our income projection actually went down from last year, which is, we had a line item in there for invoiced calls, which we haven't seen a high return for our invoiced calls and didn't think it appropriate to build that into the budget when, if we get it, that's great, but didn't feel like we could necessarily count on it in
What
our.
are
It's actually like
invoice
an
calls?
increase.
Invoice calls are if there's, and you might be able to explain it better, but if there's an out-of-town person that is found negligent, if they get a DUI and the fire department has to come
Oh.
and they get a
No, this is
ticket,
the
Oh.
actual.
the fire department will charge them for their
Oh, I see.
services.
That's what
Oh,
you-
well,
this
that's
is what
perfect.
the
They're not
actual
town
tax
residents, and there was a ticket issued that typically is the criteria for
And
invoicing.
so, are those hard to collect?
Yes. Well,
I'm
what we've had the
surprisingly-
most success is if we can get our invoice in with like the tow companies, which gets submitted to the invoice, or to the insurance company, then we see more success, but in general, If you just send it to an individual,
I wonder if I just flip
Yeah.
through real quick.
not much luck.
So you just, explain once again, you just said that you said the income, there was going to be a slight downturn, but according to budget, it looks to me like there's actually an increase.
And that increase is due to the town appropriation. So you'll see
Uh-huh.
here invoiced calls, we previously had budgeted $1,000.
It's
This
just
year we're
taken
not.
out. I see.
And also our interest on accounts, we previously had budgeted some money for interest because we just spent 200 and something thousand for our initial payment on our new truck. It was hard to predict what our income was going to be on our accounts, so we just didn't build it
Yeah.
in.
Is that a
So-
steel truck or trade-in?
We're selling it.
Selling it?
Yeah.
Sold it to a outfit in Oklahoma.
Wow.
Whoa.
So can you just quickly characterize the $8,387 increase in the town appropriation?
Yeah, so that's the balance, or the offset of the $12,000 increase for the building maintenance,
Okay.
which we've offset by
Reducing
reducing
the other line?
the
Okay.
capital outlay, along with some other individual line item plus and minuses that are less significant.
Okay, so, all right.
So if a resident of our town asks why we have an increase of 8,000 plus in the appropriation, the answer is
Building maintenance.
building maintenance.
Yep. And it would have, it would have been a $12,000 increase, which is what that line item for, would have been more than the 3.7 that we're proposing, but we felt like 3.7 was a reasonable
I'm glad you have your head wrapped around that because you may be asked that
Sure,
question. Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah.
Great. Otherwise, I don't see anything that's startling at all.
No, it really, I mean, it's a pretty easy process to go through. Their expenses are pretty straight every year, for their pagers, for their truck insurance, for their fuel, it tends to be consistent. And so it's not a difficult thing. A couple repairs that require that building maintenance line item really was.
What is going to go into the maintenance this year?
Well, we need to do some trim work on it. There's some rot happening throughout the building. There's some doors that need to be replaced. There's some add-ons with our sprinkler that we're gonna finish up. With that comes in some carpentry work that goes along with that. We have to build out and insulate that, so that's all done. So all that little stuff is added up.
Good.
Now, I think, was it last year that you guys had a fairly substantial grant amount for purchasing some equipment and some other things? Do you guys have any needs in that area that aren't going to be covered? I don't have it in front of me, I did look at it
That was the
earlier
water
today.
rescue
Yeah.
equipment, I think, yeah.
This year, we put in for a grant last year for gear, and we made it to the final round and we didn't get awarded anything. This year, we're putting in for a set of JAWS extrication equipment to go in our new truck. So we'll see if we're successful with that.
There's a trustee member who's pretty active in the grant process,
Yep.
and does a great job of seeking out and applying for the grant.
Excellent,
I
yeah.
because I just wanted to check, make sure that you guys didn't have any needs that weren't being covered, but you guys didn't want to ask for a bigger increase because of that, so.
Right.
That's stuff we don't have right now. That would be a great addition if we could, and if we do get the grant, it'll go that way, but right now we use Brattleboro for all our extrication, which is, we still will
Sure.
continue with that, but if we have our own tool, that would definitely, seeing how we cover the interstate.
Yep.
And the way, the other night we had 9 accidents all at once last Friday, so people get busy, we don't, if Brattleboro is busy with their JAWS, we don't
Sure.
wanna have to
Right.
wait.
How much did JAWS cost?
JAWS, you're gonna be right around, we put in the grant an extrication package, so it's the JAWS and spreaders and rams, everything that go with that, and it's also support pieces of equipment that'll help us stabilize a vehicle if it's not stable, so we can work on it safely. And it's right around anywhere from 40 to 50,000 for that. When you put fire department on equipment and stuff, it goes through the roof. So
Why is that?
safety, all the tests are gonna go. One air pack, just to put on one firefighter to go into a building is almost $8,000. Between the bottle, which is about 900, and then your pack and all the stuff that goes with it, the mask and all the tests, and then you gotta put gear on we had that figure, and I gotta get it updated for the town meeting, but just to put one person into a building with the safety equipment is pretty, you're over 12 grand easy.
And what, the equipment line item on there, which I think is 35,000, that includes 2 sets of gear per year. So they've set it up so that they have a revolving
Rotating, yeah.
purchase, so every year they get 2 more and they can retire some or whatever, so.
Same with air packs, because air packs have a shelf life, 15 years no matter what, and so in the past, we've gotten a grant for packs, which is great, but they all come due at the same time, so we're trying to keep up and keep that. Like last year, we needed 16 air bottles at $900 a piece, so we had to do a little scurrying.
Yeah. Well, you guys do a great job, and I'm sure I'm speaking for our town when I say how much we appreciate
Thank you.
the volunteer work that you do. Any questions amongst my colleagues at the select board for fire department? Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
You may keep that.
Okay.
All right, thanks, guys.
Merry Christmas to all our firefighters and Happy New Year.
Okay, so we still do not have the planning commission, so we'll move right into the broadband kickoff. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, so,
So, do we want to get, I guess there's no point getting in touch with the planning commission.
no, we'll just keep moving. So, as I'm sure that folks heard, Wyndham Regional Commission was awarded the joint grant to investigate the possibility of creating a communications union district for all of their member towns. And they have scheduled a kickoff meeting in mid-January on this, and so they sent out some information about that. And one of the things that they were asking of the towns, one is to participate in the effort. And the first part is to pass a simple resolution stating their intent to participate in the Wyndham Region broadband project. And then the second is to identify an individual who will be the official town lead or point of contact for this effort. And then the second step they are asking is to think of the best way to get the aforementioned survey. So part of this process is to send out a survey to everyone in town about various aspects of high-speed internet, the frequency of use, their need for it, a number of questions. And they are asking towns to participate by sending that to their residents. And so they want some ideas, and due to need, they are looking, those surveys need to be sent out for sure in paper format, but also in electronic for those who don't want to send a paper copy back in the mail. And they will be holding a workshop in the beginning of February to discuss the survey, how it's going to be administered, and the various steps for that. And then they are wondering if towns are ready or not to join a CUD, and if so, they're asking for select boards to put an article on the town meeting warning to support the joining of a CUD. So,
But we don't have to do that, we don't have to do it at this town meeting. Guilford is, according to Chris Campany, we're in very good shape in terms of the timeline, and it's not necessary, we can do it, but it's not necessary that we have it on the town morning.
No, my understanding is it would be preferred if we had it on the warning, but it's not a current requirement.
I'd advise Guilford to wait and go through this process, so he's suggesting that we wait.
Regarding the
Yes, the putting it in the town meeting.
as an
That's
article?
on, yeah.
Is that from the?
As we instructed in the announcement, the best thing towns can do right now is think through how they can best get a survey to and from as many people in town as possible. That is critical to the success of the feasibility study. They can also take this time to identify who the point person with the town will be if the town wants to participate in the process. As for timing, we don't yet have a contract in place, which means we can't start work under the grant, and meetings next week and the following week are impractical, blah, blah, blah. So
that was from the personal email
With Sarah Coffey.
With Sarah Coffey.
Yeah.
So that was slightly different information than
He's clarifying.
Yeah.
So he actually advises not to do it now.
Sure.
And so he's asking us to identify
A point person.
a Guilford resident.
Yeah. And
who-
also so a Guilford resident or a select board member or the town administrator.
Yep. Whoever you feel is the best point person
Yeah.
for the project.
And also then to start thinking about questions for the survey, which will be fed into the feasibility study.
And I actually have a draft survey
Of the survey.
from the broadband get-together that was in Dover this past
Oh,
spring.
right.
That you folks sent me to. And so that working group came up with a draft survey for towns. And this was prior to knowing whether or not both the legislature and the governor would pass the law or the act that did get passed that has enabled Wyndham Regional to apply for and receive this grant. So there was a lot of guesswork this spring at the conference. And so those who were part of the working group put this together through feedback from some other communities in Vermont that have already gone through this process, as well as different needs of individual communities that have already been expressed. So if you would like to see that, I can dig that up and share that with you. And
So, yeah, I would like to see for sure. And then, but it's the point person is really important, and do we think as a select board that it should be a select board member? I mean, really, this point person is really going to be crucial in helping to get the CUD established. So it's a lot of information to handle and a lot of meetings to go to, I dare say. So do we think that it should be a select board member? Do we think that we want to find a volunteer in town, or do we think that the town administrator is the best person to do that? I'd like to know what the town administrator thinks about that, and whether the town administrator, for example, has the time to put into the job.
I was just curious, before we ask the town administrator, is there somewhere written a job description for point person?
Well, they haven't, they would be doing that starting to the January 16th meeting.
I see, because before we ask our town administrator to say if he thinks he could do it, it would be useful to know how much time it would take.
Yeah, and that's true.
I think that is one
But a
of the big
preliminary
unanswered.
response would be okay.
I mean, at this moment, they have 2 meetings scheduled. One is the January 16th, and the other one is tentatively for February 8th.
Yeah.
And I think that, getting back to Richard's question, I think are technically 2 different separate questions. One is who should do it. I have been attending these meetings at the request of the select board for the past 2 years as they've been occurring. If you want me to continue to do so, I'm happy to do so, since I have some of that longevity, since one of the select board members who did have that experience is no longer a select board member, and the other one will be ending his term in March. I also don't see any reason why I and a select board member couldn't. There's nothing in the information from Chris or from Wyndham Regional as a whole that says it only has to be one person.
Right, and you two
have
have
both
been involved in it,
participated.
and I would hope that you would continue to want to be involved. And I think, Zon, you told me that you were and Michael, you said that too, didn't you? That you would
Yeah, I'm
continue to be
willing
interested.
to assist.
Yeah. So there we have it. I mean, maybe we have our point person with the point person and the point person's 2 auxiliary helpers. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think it's also potentially good to get different perspectives. And because from other things we've done where I and at least one select board member have gone, in discussing it as a select board as a whole, we've been able to remember different aspects from different meetings and get clearer information presented to the select board and to the town as a whole. I think with 2, I don't personally foresee this is going to be a fast-moving project. especially when you're dealing with the 27 member towns of Wyndham Regional, that's going to take a lot of work. And if I remember correctly, I think the grant is an 18-month grant. So at the moment, I don't foresee that it's going to be a huge amount of work. It looks like the meetings are going to be in the evening to get the largest amount of participation. So that's not going to have an impact on my daily work. It's just whether or not you want me to go for a couple
I
of
think it's
hours.
reasonable, I mean, that with you and Michael and Zon to continue your involvement.
And that way you two, if one of you can't make it to one meeting and somebody else can, or if neither of you can, at least somebody from the town will be there.
Are we all in sort of tentative agreement with
Sure.
that?
And you don't have to make any formal decisions.
no.
You
No,
can just
I
say,
think that's good. In reviewing the email thread, it seems as if Ann Manwaring in the Deerfield Valley is sort of spearheading a charge. And I'm not sure whether that's part of the same planning
Yes, it is.
process.
Yes.
Well, except that I think that they've been sort of moving on their own, and
Yeah,
I
they're a
think
little
that now
further-
it's going to
they're
get
further
subsumed
ahead.
into this
Correct.
larger
Oh, I
project.
I was
see.
going to say the
So-
exact same thing, but
Okay.
they're a little further ahead.
Okay.
So this all started with a telephone call that I got from Sarah Coffey
Right.
concerning whether were we falling behind the 8 ball in all of this, and she wanting to make sure that Guilford was in step with
Right.
with the wishes of many residents to have better
Sure.
better internet and service. So she was kind of panicked, and so we dug through it deeper, and she then communicated with Chris Campany at the
Yeah,
regional.
okay.
But another question I would have that I would like you to do, Peter, if you could, and if the select board agrees, is just to get further clarity about whether we should or should not have this come up at the town meeting.
I think that's legitimate.
Yeah, so, because it's all in here, we just would like, I'd like one email from Chris, for instance, that
Yes.
says, these are the reasons why I think you should go forward, or these are the reasons why you can wait a while. And that, I think the select board that would be very helpful to me and the other members of
Yeah,
the select board.
when the CUD gets formed, what I recall is that 2 communities need to come together to form a CUD, and then if whichever 2 those are, they don't need to do any voting in their community in order to move forward, they just move forward. But any additional communities after that have to bring it forward to their community.
Correct.
So I don't know what will happen how out of the 27 towns, which 2 get to not have it on their.
Well, that's not correct from my understanding.
All right, keep it.
Even the 2 original
They would have to-
towns, it has to go before the town
I see,
in order
okay.
to form a CUD.
I see, okay.
So anyone who participates, it's just a matter of when in the process that article is put on a specific town's warning for town meeting day. And I can see arguments for doing it early or doing it later, just because of the entire planning process and seeing, I think there's advantages and disadvantages to joining in early or doing it later. But I've put an action step to follow up with
Great.
Wyndham Regional for further clarification, because as Wyndham Regional certainly knows, we have a deadline coming up for getting all the final articles, in the end of January for the warning.
Great, so we all set on that?
Yes, I do think that the town, no matter where we are with the CUD, I think the town will appreciate information about how far we've come and where we're going.
And that might be a reason not to move forward too quickly, because there may not be enough information out there to make
That's
people
right.
feel comfortable and confident about stepping forward.
Speaking of the articles in town meeting, if I could can I bring that agenda item that I added up now?
Sure.
So the chair of the select board is tasked with writing the report of the select board that goes into the town warning, the town meeting warning, and I was just...
Town report.
The town report.
Which includes the warning. And I was wanting to know whether, so I'm going to write it, but I wanted to know whether any of you had any information that you thought that you would consider my putting into that report. And it would be about our work this year, what the select
Yeah,
board.
it's just a summary of the accomplishments of the select board over the
Or
past.
would you rather do that through email, if I put out a request through email?
I
Okay, so
would.
you can have more time to think about
And
it.
so I'd like to read it, maybe a couple of the previous ones
Okay,
and see what
yeah.
they're like.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
just
the
need to
one
be careful
thing,
about the discussion points over email,
Yes.
so we don't violate open meeting law.
Mm.
And so if there's specific things you wish to discuss that you want included, even in a informal agreement, you need to do it in open meeting. So
Okay.
you can request for input via email, but you can't discuss those points of input.
Right, that's what I would be doing, is
Okay.
requesting input, okay? And it would be not reply all, it would be reply to me.
Correct.
right. I mean, the one thing I do think is that the select board oversees and supports, really, the coordination of our very active town commissions. I mean, because I don't think all towns work that way, and the select board has a role to play in that.
Very good.
So I'll send you an email tomorrow
Yeah.
morning and ask you for your input. Very good. Our next item on the agenda is the personnel policy.
Oops, no.
Oh,
No,
no,
I'm sorry.
it's the Brookfield
Brookfield
service
Service
contract.
Contract Proposal. Peter, would you like to?
Yes, so obviously earlier, actually towards the end of last fiscal year, I believe it was, or was it the beginning of this one? Either way, we had the generator installed here.
Right.
The RFP was awarded to Brookfield Service, and with that, they offered you folks, being the
Right.
select board, a very reasonable deal to do the annual service contract for that new generator, which you agreed to.
Oh, right.
We had previously used Brookfield Service for the maintenance contracts for the other 3 generators in town, and we hadn't had an updated contract, so 2 years ago we put out an RFP. The RFP ended up being awarded to Powers Generator out of New Hampshire. Brookfield Service has now submitted to us a new contract proposal for providing service to all 4 generators.
Right.
I, at this time, have not heard back from Powers. I did send out a request for them to see if they were interested in providing an updated contract. Obviously, considering the time of year it is, might be a little busy, people might be out of the office. So I think that in the past, we have chosen, from Brookfield, we have chosen their, what they call Program 1, which is 1 annual visit, which they are proposing as $1,635 for all 4 units, or $1,553 if paid on or before January 10th of 2020 for this contract, which complicates things a little bit because this would technically need to be part of the budget planning process because it's for the upcoming fiscal year, not for this one.
Do you think that, would you advise that we wait with Powers, or should we just move on?
I personally would wait to see what Powers has to say. At the moment, they have been cheaper than Brookfield was. Powers has been providing excellent service to us.
For the 4 generators?
Well, they've been servicing the 3 because this one's brand new.
Right. So we would want to then.
We want to see what their proposal was for all 4.
And you haven't nudged them?
I did last week and haven't heard anything back. Now, that being said, it would be a little bit, in my personal opinion, I think it would be a little bit awkward to ask Powers for a contract proposal for all 4 generators since you just signed a 1-year contract with Brookfield to service this one. So I think, does that make sense?
Yes, I'm starting to understand.
So Brookfield has, this contract that they're presenting here is to add the other 3 generators to the agreement that you made with them on the new generator.
Well, wouldn't it make sense to go with them for this year, since they're already going to do one of our generators, and wait for next year to hear from Powers?
It's up to you folks to make that
I think that makes
call.
sense for
Well, I
yeah.
have another question as well.
If I can interject
Yes,
a
you
moment.
may.
Thank you. Is that your contract with Powers is now expired, or not expired, they have fulfilled the contract.
Right.
Of 2019.
For 2019, and so we do not currently have one with them.
No, I understand that. My other question is that I noticed Vermont State Inspection highlighted, if required, was on Program 2 of the Brookfield service contract, and I didn't know if we were required to have state inspection or whether that was desirable. See what I mean?
That is not something I have been aware of. It's not something that they have provided for us in my tenure with the town as of yet. I don't know if that's something new that is required, or if it is just an additional.
Could you find out for us?
Sure.
Yeah, because when they were breaking down the expense of Program 1 and Program 2,
I see that they have it highlighted.
they had it highlighted, and I didn't know whether this was something we needed to pay attention to. Because the 1553 for Program 1 does not include state inspection, so the $100 would be added to that, whereas the $100 would be folded into the $24.92 if paid before January 10th for both of those. So I
Sure.
was just,
So we need to find out if the state requires inspection, or is it desirable?
Well, the other thing that I was going to add to that is, in the previous service contracts that we've had, part of the process may be doing an annual inspection, and it has just not been explicitly stated that in the service
Or
contract.
charged.
For that matter. And it may be something like getting inspection on your car, where the expense for them has gone up, so in turn, the expense to us goes up.
So let's find out.
now,
So
can
it
we-
may not be something new, it may be something that's always been there.
So, but I'm looking at, when is our next select board meeting?
January the 13th.
Right, so do we need to empower Peter to make a choice by entertaining a motion? Because, look at it, it says that
It says January 13th, right?
January 10th.
10th, that's what I
But
said.
but you're not saving that much money. I mean, I don't
It
think
You're
is
saving,
saving.
you're saving $80
$80.
Well,
off of us $1,600.
$80 seems like a lot of money to me.
But there are other factors involved in the competitor, to see what they come up with.
No, we.
So that's, just for reference, that 80-some dollars is a 5% savings,
yeah.
discount, however you want to put it on the
For early
proposed.
payment, yeah.
Correct.
Or for, yeah.
I thought, excuse me, Richard, I thought that we were positive toward my suggestion of going with Brookfield, going ahead with hiring Brookfield either with Program 1 or Program 2 for this year, since we've already hired them to inspect and do maintenance.
But that contract is over. That contract was for 2019. So I thought that was a good idea until Peter said that was last year.
I thought that was Powers was last year.
It was.
No, maybe I'm
we're
just
crossing-
misunderstanding.
Oh, I see, Powers was we had the contract with Powers last year?
Yeah, we've had a contract, we had a 2-year contract with Powers.
Mhm.
So they just completed that contract. When they did a series of inspections on the 3 existing units in July of this year. That was the conclusion of that contract. So should you wish to continue with them, they would need to submit a new contract proposal to you.
But haven't we?
This was an unsolicited.
Oh, okay.
Well, so here's the thought, unsolicited, because it's unsolicited, they might be willing to extend the date by which it needs to be signed and returned. And we
Absolutely.
get
I
some
can-
information, and maybe you could ask for not the 10th, but a week later or 2 weeks later, so we could have time to.
I'm
Talk about
guessing
it.
from previous conversations with the president of Brookfield, I'm guessing that they'd be able to give you another week or two so
Oh,
you could
okay.
discuss it at your next select board meeting.
Well,
Okay, so then I was going to
We are
entertain
in
your
accord.
suggestion for a motion, but it seems as if we don't need that.
We
to
don't need it.
empower
Let
the
me
town
withdraw it
and-
even
oh.
before
Well,
our
but
meeting.
let's, except unless they for some reason give you a no answer that they want, then do we need a contingency to move forward if they say no?
That's up to you folks.
So,
Yes.
Obviously, there's no guarantee that he will say yes, but the fact that he's trying to get your new business, I would be surprised that he wouldn't give you an extension of 3 days,
Yeah.
you know?
And you could
So-
just report back to us so that we're set to make a decision.
yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Everybody in agreement about that?
Yeah.
Oh, harmony, I love it. Okay. Now it's on to.
So just before you move
Oh.
on, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I just, for clarification, so there's actually two action points for me to take under this proposal. One is to get clarifications regarding the state inspections, and the
Yep.
second is to request an extension on the prepayment deadline.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to old business, and that would be the personnel policy, the vacation business. And you all looked at that in the,
Yes.
I have that somewhere.
And Tom,
So-
your question was answered, right?
It wasn't really.
I didn't think it was, I mean, that wasn't something that I could specifically answer. That was,
Who should answer it? Is it Will?
it's a discussion the select board needs to have.
So
what's the
that's what we're doing
question?
right now. Well, the question,
Is
shall
it
I
about
speak,
this?
Peter?
Ask your chair.
Shall I speak?
Yes, please speak. We've been desperate to hear you.
Well, so the way that I think we've agreed that we should move forward, let's say that I started work for the town on April the 1st, let's say, that my vacation dates until July 1st would be prorated. And then on July 1st would start how vacations are counted. So then on the second year of, which July 1st becomes my second year? You know, and that's really tricky if, let's say, you got hired. It could be really tricky if you got hired, for instance, in August 15th. So you would have worked nearly a year before your first July would have happened. And so it just, am I making sense? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's partly where the question from the employee came from.
Yeah.
And that's why it's prorated for the first year.
So there would be an expected, probably it needs, to me, it seems like something needs to be clarified in the language, just so that we're clear that until the first year, the first July that you meet, that would be called your first July, your first year. Your first year happens after that.
Yes.
So that you could really work here for a year and 10 months before your first year of vacation would.
Because they got to a July.
You hadn't gotten to a July.
Wow,
So, and I think-
that's a problem.
Well, I don't know if it's a problem, I
No,
just
it
think
just
it needs to be
needs to
clear.
write a sentence
It just
that
needs to be
expresses
clear if
that.
that's what it is.
I mean, I'm just trying to use myself as, in my own
Yeah.
head, I'm sitting here trying to use myself as an example of how that worked. Because I was hired in the beginning of November, you know, and so then my vacation days were prorated, but I think because of that's a good question. I don't know how you guys would do that.
I mean, the person's getting prorated vacation, and that's fine, so long as you're inside a circle that's of the, you know, we're all getting 5 days, but when do I get to start getting
Well,
more
doesn't
vacation?
this doesn't answer it? Vacation leave accrual begins on an employee's date of hire. It is prorated to 1st July,
Yes.
beginning of fiscal year, and accrues thereafter on 1st July as earned.
Isn't the
Except this says at the beginning of the second year. It seems to me like it would be better if it said at the beginning of the second July 1st or
That's
something.
the second fiscal year.
Fiscal year.
That's what it
Yes,
should
yeah,
say.
yeah.
The second fiscal year.
So it was somehow really clear to
Yeah.
anybody stepping in that there's no way they're gonna, you know, they're not gonna be able to bring this question
It should
up.
be
So-
at the beginning of the the second
Fiscal year.
fiscal year,
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, at date of hire, or, yes.
at the beginning of the second fiscal year, at the beginning of the fourth fiscal year.
This is really not at the date of hire. It is at the date of hire and the first fiscal year. The top line.
Yes.
If the top line said, I think that would really make it clearest of all.
Yes.
At the date of hire and for the first
And
fiscal.
for the first fiscal year.
Yeah, because now that we've switched everything to July
And then
1st.
all the other ones say at the beginning of the second
Fiscal
year.
Yeah.
Does
make
that,
sense?
yes, it does.
Makes sense to
Make-
me.
That makes it clear.
Yeah?
I think so.
So do we need to vote on
I
that?
don't think so.
Yes, you
We do?
certainly do.
Okay.
This is a town policy. In order for it to be implemented, you need to
All right,
have a motion. I am currently,
do you want to write it down? Do you want to have a moment to write it down and then we can?
I was working on that right now.
Okay.
Would anyone like a cookie?
I'm full of cookies.
So I will take this opportunity to have a cookie.
You like
I'll take a prorated cookie.
A fiscal cookie.
A fiscal cookie, right?
Okay, so I have changed it to state at date of hire and for first fiscal year, and then each of the 4 remaining lines states the year and then fiscal year. So second fiscal year, 4th through 14th fiscal years,
Yes.
15th through 20th fiscal years, and 21st fiscal year and thereafter.
Good.
Yeah.
So do I have a
So-
motion?
Hang on, do you need to say, as a clarification, like at the start of the personnel policy, that the Guilford fiscal year runs from July?
It already states that.
It already
It
said
does.
that, okay, then that's perfectly clear, yes.
Did you make a motion?
Yes, I
Okay.
move that we that we accept the personnel policy as amended tonight.
I will
Do-
second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion
Thank
carries
you, Sam.
unanimously. Thank you very much, Select Board. Now, on to the warrants. Who's
Let's
doing
see,
the
Gordon
warrants?
Gordon,
isn't
I did.
here.
Did you
Do
folks
you wanna
have a
make a
chance to
motion?
review the warrants?
I haven't reviewed the
I
warrant.
didn't look at the,
So you would really want to look at this one, the 33,000.
So, yeah, that's the budget status report, that's not the
So it would
invoice
be in
edit
here?
list. That's just the payroll.
so it would be here. Oh, I see, yes, okay, so I'm looking to see if
What the big items
the big
are.
numbers.
Sand and salt.
I see, yeah.
I will have while he's reviewing that, I will have a copy of the personnel, a completed copy of the personnel policy for you all to sign at the next meeting.
Okay,
Since
good.
you have just approved it.
Okay, yes, I can see that in the, when we get to the, so I would move that we approve the payroll warrant for the week ending December 15th of $8,732.25, as well as the payroll for week ending December 22nd, 2019 of $7,926.76, as well as expense warrant number 2012, totaling $33,407.03 for a grand total expenditure of $50,066.04.
And I'll second that.
All right, and then
Is there a
can-
discussion? And can you
Yes,
explain?
yeah, then I'll explain just the largest expenses that might be of interest to folks are $6,954 for salt, and then there was $8,138.73 for Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance. And those are the only.
That's half of the expense right there.
Yes, that's half. There is a recreational surfacing, Vermont recreational surfacing bill for guardrails of $3,847. So those.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, communications.
I have several here, I have a few here. The first one is the follow-up from the State of Vermont Operations and Safety Bureau regarding the request that a select board made to them and the changes that you had requested.
Yes.
We had previously been notified by the operations engineer that their recommendation was to deny your request for the several things over there. And the Traffic Safety Committee met and voted. They met on the 11th of December and they voted to accept the recommendation from the safety operations engineer to deny those requests, as well as they also approved the changing of the speed limit zone from Paul's Road in Guilford through exit 1 in Brattleboro. And so it will now be 40 miles per hour instead of 35.
And I forget, is the town in the village part, will that be 35 or 30?
It will remain 35.
So it's just a 5 difference. There
Uh,
should be 2 there, Brenda.
There's two payroll.
And is there a place to sign it?
Yep, flip the page.
Oh, thank you, sorry to.
That's all right, no problem.
The second is Sevka sent a letter of appreciation to the select board for the appropriation for the year.
Excellent.
And they do a lot
Yes.
They do.
with a little money. If you notice what we offer them, it's, they're a thrifty group.
So we also received a notice of a filing of a certificate of public good by Comcast, just notifying that they have submitted that to the state for the state's review. So it's a combination of Southern Vermont Cable Company and Comcast of Connecticut, Georgia, Massachusetts, New York, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont, LLC. And if you want more information, you can go to the Public Utilities Commission and they will happily give it to you.
Is that it for communications, Peter?
It is, and then we have the summary of actions from the 12/9
Right,
meeting.
so we want to make sure that those are all actions that have been acted upon,
Yep.
correct? So the minutes were approved. Peter sent a follow-up email for BPCC usage dates to the BPCC.
I did, and,
To
Excellent.
us, yeah.
Mhm.
yep,
And we moved to change the location of the Emergency Operations Center from the Guilford, Vermont Fire Department to the town office. That's been set.
yeah, you guys moved that.
Yeah. And
Haven't had
you
time
added
to take any
the
action yet.
items to the select board projects and priorities list.
Yep.
Which items were they? I can't remember.
Those, we should probably clarify that slightly.
Mhm.
Those were the items, the proposed action items from the result of the CAT 4
Yes,
exercise.
right, okay, right. And we approved the warrants, which leads us to number 13 on the agenda.
No.
Could I move to adjourn?
No, I have.
No.
Oh, yes, thank you. That's right.
Okay, yes. I mean, with your indulgence.
Oh, of course,
Me.
Okay.
It's with our eagerness.
Okay, so every year I write a poem for the Christmas stockings of the Guilford elders. And
Not one for Hanukkah?
the Christmas stocking is all-purpose. Well, if the shoe fits, wear it, right? I mean,
No,
the
the
sock.
sock.
If the
That's
side,
right.
when the side
I just didn't want it to be exclusive.
No. Well, this has nothing to do with Christmas anyway. And so this is really honoring the restoration of Sweet Pond. And it's dedicated to Al Franklin. And it's called Stopping by Sweet Pond on a Snowy Evening, after Robert Frost. Dark times, take heart, abandon woe. As streams join forces under snow, Our ancient pond will reappear above the meadow. Trust the flow. My little poem must linger here to praise the pool of volunteers who flooded the state to give and take one message, sweet to every ear. What neighbors love, we won't forsake. Oh, sweet pond, may your peepers wake and new kids dare that happy leap of faith from the rope swing, diving deep. Such are the promises to keep as waters ripple clear and deep.
Wonderful. Thank you, Verandah.
Lovely.
I used to swing on that rope myself.
That's right.
Now, item number 13 on the agenda. Do I have any talk
I
about
will
that?
firmly move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
Is there any discussion?
Let's go.
All those in favor?
And Merry Christmas,
Merry
Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year, all of that.
All.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ian.
Peace on earth.